Welcome back to my channel, everybody. For the ones who don't know me, my name is Shweta. I'm the founder of Healthy Dynamics. We are a coaching practice that helps healthcare professionals from non-English speaking backgrounds become better, more empathetic and collaborative communicators and communicate with influence and impact. So today I thought I would do something a little bit different. Instead of introducing experts in the healthcare field, I thought I would introduce a person who I know personally very well, and we've done a bit of work together, and she's definitely one of my colleagues, and she's very much an expert in the communication field. So please welcome Renee Giarrusso. I don't know if I pronounced the surname correctly.
You did.
Lovely.
I was waiting then. No, well done. Thanks for having me. And yeah, really looking forward to our chat. My team and I have been working with leaders and teams across 24 industries for the last or close to 2 decades. And if you had to say what are our main areas of expertise, it's leadership, communication, and mindset. And I think communication is foundational to be a good leader. And I think, it's in everything. Yeah.
Yes.
So thanks for having me.
Yeah. And and you've worked in a lot of industries and you specialize in communication. So I just thought, let's do something different and let's focus solely on communication. Just a little bit of a switching of gears and what you can add. But yeah, thank you very much for agreeing to do this, Renee, with us. Anyway, so let's get started. So how did you get started on your career as a communication specialist, and what got you interested in the field?
Yeah, I can say, looking back now in my 5 decades of life, that I've been interested in communication since I was a child. I've always been attracted. All my friends are from different cultures. I've always been attracted to other people's cultures and what makes people tick. And my favourite subject at school, I didn't love school, I'll be honest, but I loved English.
Okay.
And I have been writing since I was 8 years old. And something that's quite ironic is I was cleaning out a box that Mum's getting rid of all the stuff finally, trying to get rid of it all. And I cleaned out this little journal I'd written in grade 2, and the teacher had asked us to write on all these topics, and I wrote on feelings.
Wow.
So I was only like 8 years old. So I've always been fascinated with communicating. Like yourself, I'm a connector. I love people. I think, anyone listening or watching, doesn't matter who you are or who you come across, if you really take the time, build the communication muscle, there'll be no one that you can't get along with. In my 12 years of corporate in senior leadership, sales and marketing roles, communication was key to everything, communicating with my team, suppliers, marketers, and cross divisions. And then coming into my own business 18 years ago this year, communication and our Communicating with Impact program's been one of our sort of signature programs that's refreshed every year, because obviously the world has changed. And I think with hybrid work in place now, AI and less people doing more, now we need to tap into these human skills more than ever.
100%, yeah. And I actually attended your Communication with Impact workshop this year and got so much out of it. And I am using a lot of those strategies that you covered when working with people. So that was very, very valuable. And I do agree with you that the human skills, they're worried about AI will replace my job. But then again, it's a time for us to really pivot and reinvent ourselves to become more human.
And I think if you're like the health, and I'm really interested in talking about healthcare because I've had health challenges this year, and I've got 8 health practitioners working with me weekly. Every industry, it's important, but I think now more than ever, just people are looking for that point of difference. And if you're a business owner or someone in a role or a nurse or whoever you are, your point of difference isn't being better than anyone else. It's being different. And the best way to differentiate yourself in this day and age, I think, is to have really clear, really good communication skills and rapport and connection with people.
100%, yeah. And I think that becomes your unique proposition value proposition, as they say. So
USP, yeah, that's right.
100%. Yeah. So because you've had a lot of experience and achievements over the years in this field, From your understanding, what are the key challenges that you have observed over the years that have held back individuals and organizations from collaboratively communicating with one another over the years?
It's a great question. How long have we got? But I'm gonna give you the main one. So this is one-on-one or working with teams, even colleagues, friends, family. Communication's a skill we need in and out of work.
Mm-hmm.
The big one I see is adaptability.
Okay.
I think people think I'm me. If you don't get my message, like it or lump it. But I always say to people, communication is a response that you get. If you're not getting back what you need, shape and shift your message. So adapt. If someone's big picture and talks really fast like me, adapt to that. If someone's very detailed and considered and structured, slow down and match them a bit. So learning to adapt and being open to adapt. A big one is listening. Listening, communication's all about speaking and listening in a nutshell. But listening skills, only 20% of execs surveyed globally every year say that they feel listened to profoundly. That's a big one. Presenting, I get a lot of, especially senior leaders that have the information, are very smart, but don't know how to communicate when they present. So they've got the message, but not the delivery, the energy, all that sort of thing. And I think a really big one is getting buy-in and influencing. So whoever you're working with, even if you don't have a direct team, you're working with peers, how can you get buy-in to ideas? How can you softly influence so that they appreciate your diversity of thought? But the biggest challenge, I think, that's really a hurdle for everyone is the currency that's missing at the moment, which is time. Everyone's running. I've had three coaches today say, I'm actually out of breath, Renee. I don't have time to have conversations. And I'm like, that's fine, but you'll end up spending 3 days fixing that.
Yes.
So slowing down, being a little bit more present and in the moment, and really listening to what's not being said, the body language piece.
Yes. And, I do so much work on active listening. And I think in healthcare, it's vital. And that's the number one complaint that patients have about healthcare providers, that we're not, I'm not being heard. I'm not being listened to or understood. So I do a lot of work in that area. So, yeah.
And that's needed, because when you're not well and you've got someone that might not listen, it can come across as a lack of empathy.
Yes, 100%. Yeah. And they just don't care, or they just want to usher you out of the door and find the next person in. And that's just not how you should be doing it. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Now, I'm going to be, a lot of my posts and videos next week are going to be about emotional intelligence, but I thought I would segue into your take on the role that emotional intelligence plays in helping people become better communicators. And I know that you run a workshop on this as well, which I'm yet to attend. So tell us about what the role of emotional intelligence, or what it is for a start, what role it plays.
It is, Trevor, years ago, you never heard the word culture. Now it's everywhere. Now EQ, EI, or emotional intelligence is being talked about. Like I said, in this world of rush and busyness, EQ is important. So emotional intelligence, in simple terms, is understanding yourself. So your triggers, your emotions, who lights you up, who gets you mad, all that sort of stuff, and managing that. And then understanding the triggers and emotions of others and managing that. What I'm seeing a lot is people think they're managing others, but they're not understanding them first. So in really simple terms, emotional intelligence is really understanding what makes people tick, and yourself, and then communicating in a way to cut through to that. So if I'll give you an example. If you have a meeting and there's a certain person that triggers you, they might be a great person, but you just go, oh God, here we go again. If you know that and you've got emotional intelligence and control, you'll be able to deal with it. If you know that, but you slam your book on the table and walk out, you're not managing that. Emotional intelligence is so important. There's studies at the moment, hiring managers will base their recruitment decisions, 71% will go for emotional intelligence versus IQ. There's companies now that aren't asking for a degree, companies that you had to have a degree to even get in. No, they're looking at emotional intelligence. It's important because it's pretty straightforward. If you connect with someone and understand someone and they understand you, you're going to have connection. When you have connection, you have rapport. When you have rapport, you have influence and you click. When you don't, it goes the other way. So I think rapport building's missing in this day and age, and people think, to build rapport, Renee, I need hours. I don't have hours. Rapport building could be a 5-minute conversation asking how somebody is. And if they go, oh, my work, no, how are you? And actually getting to know people at a human level. You mentioned we do run a lot on it. We use a tool that looks at, it's a world-class tool. It looks at the 10 competencies of EQ. So for anyone listening or watching, imagine if it was a cake, the 10 ingredients that make up a person high in EQ. And these include such cool things. Optimism. People high in EQ have hope for now and the future. That's one of mine that's off the chart. But I really believe things happen for a lesson, and having optimism helps bring that energy in with other people. Empathy is the other one. We talked about this, not pity or sympathy, but empathy. So actually hearing with their own ears, seeing with their own eyes and saying, hey, Shweta, I haven't been where you are, but I'm here if you need me.
Yes.
And picking up when people aren't themselves, the passionate person is easy to pick up. You hear when good people leave organisations, there's something wrong. And there's quite a few others, but a big one that I think people will relate to is self-control. So people with high EQ have very good self-control. They don't lose it. They stay in check. They manage their feelings. They know when to leave a situation if they need to. And if you're a leader out there or you're leading a team in any business or healthcare, knowing when people hit that tipping point as well. But it's huge. If you think of EQ as understanding yourself and others, and you say, how does this relate to comms, communication? It is communication. Yeah.
And in the I think a couple of months ago, I did devoted an entire week on my social media to talking about identifying and being aware of your triggers and how to manage them. So I think that ties really well with being emotional intelligence. And I place a lot of emphasis on self-awareness, and it's actually the very first module of my coaching program. It's an unusual way of starting something, but I think
it's a smart way. All ours all start with self-awareness. If you're not aware of yourself, how can you be aware of others? It's a bit like the roof tiler that advertises, I have the best roofs, come and buy off me, and their roof's caving in, right?
Yes.
And I sort of like to call it emotional intelligence is about you and how you manage it, and social intelligence is how you understand others and manage that. And in healthcare particularly, like I know they're time poor, they're understaffed, but every industry is, so there's no excuse really. But just bringing in some key things even quickly can make such a difference.
Yes, 100%. Yeah. Now, you do a lot of work on how to sort of, again, build that communication muscle, as you say, in a hybrid work setting. And I know that everyone now, almost every organization is now moving into remote work or hybrid work. So if we now take that into the context of, say, and again, I personally have done videos and content on this, on how to show up as your best self when you are as a healthcare provider during online consultations. So what would you say is to be equally collaborative and a connector in a hybrid setting? What would you say are the best ways to go about that?
Yeah, good question. And we do a bit on this. So one of the things we say in any hybrid setting is you need to adjust your mindset and beliefs, adapt your environment and technology, and amplify your communication and connection. So how do you do that? Have ways of working. If you're online, and I'm saying, like, picturing here a doctor's consult, if you're online, just take the time to say, hi, how are you? I've had some recently, I'll be honest. It's like, hey, now we've got to just do, and I'm a people person. And of course I'm going to respond, but it could make someone's day. So that's important. Remember, technology is the conduit to connection.
Yes.
It's not the connection. So don't think because you're on a Zoom consulting, you can just say anything. Imagine it's no different than being in a room. And if you struggle with it, pick the, do phone consultations. It goes the same way. I really think it's around, taking the time, asking a few questions at the start, which doctors do and nurses do, and I get that. But just from recent experience, just going, how are you? And just knowing a little bit about the patient. And if they're a regular patient, make sure you're up to date with the notes.
Yes.
That's a big one, face-to-face or virtually. If they're going, oh, hang on, I'll find your file. I had this the other day. I'll find your file, and it wasn't even my file. And I was like, geez, so be prepared, then you can be present.
Yes. Yes.
I think that's key. Yeah.
That definitely is a good strategy. And because my therapist, even though she is based in Melbourne, she always does remote sessions with me when I have monthly consultations with her, and the first thing she always asks is, how are you and how you've been feeling? So that makes a world of difference for sure. Yeah.
And how are you? And they're just pausing, and if they're watching us now, we're evenly distributed on this Zoom. So, make sure you're not just seeing their forehead, make sure that your camera's right. And, that they always say where you can see your heart, so to speak, so that you're there and you've got your gestures. And because people, I know I'm an affective communicator, so I really love non-verbal cues. So someone that's sitting there like that and talking to me like that, I can't relate to as much. But I think be planned, be present, and pause.
Yes. Let's talk a little bit about pause. So, sometimes what can happen is, and this is quite common, not just in the corporate world, but also in healthcare, more in healthcare, I would say. Especially if a patient is in a situation where they feel quite vulnerable, which most people do. And so the pause can sometimes lead to a little bit of awkwardness. So how do you think healthcare providers can manage that so that it doesn't lead to a disconnect, and also they don't have to fill the gaps, so to speak?
Yeah, I think being open to a pause, none of us are familiar with it anymore, because we're all trying to get so much in. And you when people ask you, how was your weekend? What did you do? Did you go to the football? Everyone wants to talk about what they want to talk about, because we think at 400 words a minute and we speak at 150. So we're always going to be out of sync. I'm very big into, and I'm not saying I'm the best at it, and it's something I've focused on a lot to work on, but a pause creates impact. And count to 10. If you're the physician, if you ask a question, just pretend you're taking notes, whatever, just 10 seconds. It does feel a while, I will admit. The other person will always speak. The other thing with pausing, if you're asked a question by the patient, is it helps you respond and not react. So we all know the difference. So a reaction is just quickly, just so I can answer your question, and it's full of emotion, and a response is full of logic. So pausing enables that. So one question at a time if you're speaking to a patient, and let them respond, and then let that response shape the next question.
Yes. Yes. And yes, and I think I do remember doing those types of posts as well, on how to ask questions, how to respond to questions, especially when people don't know the answer. It's it's absolutely okay to admit that. And what do you do instead of saying, that's a good question, and I know you said it, but and there's nothing wrong in that, but sometimes it sort of can make a person feel like, oh, did I make this person uncomfortable? So how to navigate around that, especially
if you're asking something challenging as a physician, I'm just making this up, tell me a bit about how you know, instead of saying, how do you feel at the moment, it could be in context. Since we last spoke, are you feeling the same or different? Rate it 1 to 5. 5 is you feel great. 1 is you feel shocking. Where are you sitting? So give them context, and that gives the person, everyone understands ratings.
Yes.
From 5-year-olds to, you know, 90-year-olds. But I think with the question, keep the questions open. So don't say, how do you, you know, do you feel good? Like
with the yes or no response.
Yeah. So how are you feeling now compared to our last catch up? What's different? So, you know, I call it the 5 wives and the 1 husband. What, when, why, where, who, and how?
Yes.
Just use a few more questions, tell me about, and it changes any question into an open question, but don't do it too much or you sound like a recruiter.
Yeah. And I think also it's also important to, yes, ask open questions, but I think questioning itself, it should be between, you know, not just because you're ticking a box, but you're also going deeper to build that connection with the patient. So, so not just keeping it open, but also delving deep, you know, to when the patient is comfortable, obviously. So,
totally. Yeah, you're right. So you're not going to say why you're not feeling well. You'll say, how have you been feeling? What do you think's made you feel worse? Why do you think this is happening? So I always say people, I don't like saying this, but I do say it. People are like onions. You've got to peel the layers off, build the rapport and connection, and your patient will be much more open and honest with you.
Yes, 100%. And it is important because instead of them holding back, it sort of gives that opportunity for them to open up and engage much more in that conversation. Now, speaking of healthcare, you have been an inpatient with your health challenges. Now, if you're comfortable sharing that with others, you can.
I'm fine. Yeah.
Okay. So, and it is quite, it would be good if you can, because this is a lot of my audience on LinkedIn are in that space. So now, so you were in you are also current, you're not an inpatient at the moment, but you are seeking a lot of healthcare
I was
at the moment.
2 weeks ago for a week.
Well, 2 weeks ago, yes, and it was for quite a while. So for this, how was your experience over there? How well or otherwise did the medical team who were in charge of your treatment and care communicate with each other, and what could they have done better?
Good question. So, and I hadn't reflected on this until I knew we were chatting. So it was good to think about. So I had some major surgery, so, you know, breast cancer surgery, and in the same time I was in hospital, I was finding out whether I was clear of cancer or not. So sort of put those 2 things together. I was in a private hospital, a really good hospital. What they did really well, was the handovers. So when a nurse came in and said, Renee, I'm now not on shift, this is Mary, they checked my name 5,000 times. They checked my name. And what I really noticed was some of them did it really good. Some of them did it not all of them, but did it at the doorway without even consulting me. But most of the time, it was really good. And what that does for a patient is it makes you go, oh, this next person, I don't have to explain everything. Yes. They know where I'm at. They've got my results. They've updated the whiteboard or whatever in the room. So they had a structure to that. So that was really good. A lot of empathy. I don't take painkillers. So they were like, wow, you're the minority. And I said, just bring me Panadol. And they were good about that. And they asked me a lot of questions. I think too, if anyone's an inpatient at night, I don't know about you, but I hardly slept in there. I was in a lot of pain. And the night nurses, I had one actually sit on my bed and sort of get to know me.
Wow.
Yeah, she was lovely. With any great case study, there's always improvements. And I would say one of the improvements was there was 1 or 2 nurses that were it was very spearly. Hey, Renee, it sort of talked down to me as if I was a child. And I felt that they were in a rush, and I get that, and I didn't take it personally, but there was a little bit of that where you thought, oh, I can't wait for that other nice nurse to come back. A little bit of that. But overall, I have to say, if I was to rate my experience, it'd be a 9 out of 10.
Okay.
And I have had surgery years ago, and there was the opposite, it was
Okay.
people coming in and out, not knocking, because I always had my door shut, barging in,
Mm-hmm.
sitting on my bed when I came out from a shower, stuff like that. So I think it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Empathy, just say hi. I think eye contact's important. You know me, I love eye contact. I'm an eye contact person.
Mm-hmm.
So even if you're taking notes, it's nice to look up
Yes,
and
of
acknowledge
course.
the patient. And a few of them in the surgery the other week said, let us, you're very independent. If you need anything, please let us know. So I never felt like I was hounding them.
Mm.
And then I will tell you something. I got my pathology back the day before I went home. So I was in for 5 days and I got good news. And
Mm-hmm.
of course, I had to do my physio, my walk. And I said to
Mm-hmm.
her nurse, I've got good news. And she goes, you can have some champers? Oh, you can't. And I said, no, but can I have a plate of cheese and Vickies? And they bought me that.
Oh,
But
lovely.
she was genuinely excited, and she came in and she wasn't even the nurse on call for me, and said, thanks for sharing your story, and I'm so happy for you. And just makes such a difference. And even the cleaner,
Yeah.
we're all a team. The cleaner spoke to me. She was lovely. And that's something to remember if you're listening. It's not just you, the physician, it's anyone that has a touch point with your patient.
Yes, absolutely. When I was in the education space, everyone used to say to me, all my colleagues, that make sure you have a good relationship with the admin staff,
Yeah.
receptionist, and the cleaner, because they know more about the place
Oh,
than you. So
they know everything. Yeah,
yeah,
totally. And the amazing team that brings you your food, and they're rushing around, and
yeah.
and I think all of us are patients at some time, have some empathy the other way as well.
Yeah, and
No.
I've had a very similar experience as an inpatient. 2 times I went to the same place because the first time was
Yeah.
so good. Again, I
Yeah.
have to take my hat off to the nurses. This was in a psych ward of all the places.
Yeah. Yeah.
The nurses were just absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
And they were so. But I did have one therapist who was not very good.
No.
The interesting thing is she came. So they before you left, did you leave them some feedback at all?
I did an online feedback, and I got I got flowers, like very spoiled, but the last day I got 3 big bunches of flowers, and I said to the cleaner, you're lovely. And she goes, no, we're all a team. And
Mm-hmm.
I left all my flowers for them.
Mm-hmm.
And they love that. And they did do an online feedback thing. And as I've got older, when you're a bit younger, you get all these feedback forms. I did that and gave
Mm-hmm.
them all the feedback.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a good point. Ask for
Yeah.
feedback. If
Yeah.
you're scared to ask, there's a reason. So
Mm.
give and get feedback, because you can't learn. And even if you're amazing, always ask, is there anything you could add to what we do?
Yes. And
Yeah.
going back to my experience, I left that that I had an amazing time with the nurses, but I was
Mhm.
also constructive about how that one therapist really sort of triggered me.
Oh, yeah,
But
yeah,
then the
yeah.
second time when I went back to the same place, she had done a 180 and she was amazing. I
Yeah.
was actually dreading that oh my God, it's her again.
Yeah, but
But
what you said then is
yeah,
really important. As human beings, it's like if you get 100 pieces of good feedback and one that isn't good, we focus on the one that isn't.
on the negative, yeah.
So I just think if you're a physician out there, I'm positive, the positives outweigh the negatives, but
Yes.
you're not looking at the negatives. Go get a bit more self-awareness around, that's the EQ part. People high in emotional intelligence take feedback on board, and if they're not getting it, they ask for
They
it.
ask for it, yeah, they get the
Yeah.
clarification. Wow, this was an incredible chat. I think we could go, if I had my way, I'd go on
Go
for
for
hours.
hours.
Yeah, 100%. Now, would you mind just telling people where they can find you? I know I'm going to tag you on LinkedIn, obviously, but where else can
Yeah,
people?
definitely. I do a lot, very active on LinkedIn. Just read and maybe put my surname in the notes.
Yes.
ReneeGiarrusso.com.
Mm-hmm.
And LinkedIn and giftmindset.com. So we have two websites, but Instagram and especially LinkedIn, I'm a writer there. But, our website, reneegiarrusso.com, has, hundreds of free resources, white papers on this. There's even a 2-page learning jolt on collaborative communication you can download for free. because that's a really good sort of cheat sheet on some of the things. But one little thing I'd love to say is just this is the easiest tip, be a little bit more like the person you're communicating to.
Yes.
Don't change who you are, but if they're a bit slower in their speaking and you're picking up they're a bit upset and you come in like a bull at a gate, you're not going to connect.
Yes.
And on the phone, the same thing. Sounds a bit weird, but you can hear breathing on the phone. If you match that, you'll get in sync with the other person. So just remember anyone that you might not connect as well as you'd like to, that you might be thinking about in your family or at work, just sit down next time and just match them a bit. Just go at their pace, sit in a similar way and watch what happens. And it's you know this, Shweta, it's so powerful and it's a game changer.
100%. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, everyone watching and listening, make sure that you hit the subscribe button and the notification bell, and do leave a like for this video. And thank you very much for your time, attention, and presence. And we will see you next week.